welcome to Shred Cels episode 72. I'm your host, Alex Schmitz, and with me here today is Andrew Gleason.
Still changing the table.
Peter Frank.
They got me back.
And new member to the podcast, Ryan. Ryan, what's your last name?
Childs.
I thought so, but I didn't want to say it and be wrong. Ryan Childs. Yes, Ryan is the roommate of both Pete and Andrew, not actually a part of Tech Eds.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, the other roommate.
The other roommate.
You don't let him out often.
No, he doesn't do
I
that.
think that's usually a good plan.
It really is.
I think you might have been mentioned once or twice before on the podcast, just in casual conversation.
Probably,
He
yeah.
has watched a lot of
He
things
watches
that
the
we've
stuff
watched.
with us, so, you know.
There you
if
go.
we ever watch a thing, then he generally watches it with us.
Or at least part of it.
Off and on, yeah.
That's right. So why don't you tell us just your year major and how you got into anime?
I am a junior applied math major, and these two sat me down and made me watch Gurren Lagann.
So that was your first.
He was
was
my
my
freshman
first.
year roommate.
Yep.
I told him and Andrew that it was going to be an experience that changed their lives.
And it
And
was.
It actually did.
Yeah.
It actually
Like,
was.
no,
for us, so-
I was really right.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
actually was. I like Kenny because Kenny says that all the time. Like, did it change your life? And I'm like, Kenny, not that many things changed my life, but Gurren Lagann really does. It shows you where the ceiling is.
It shows you that you shouldn't have one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ceiling is for people who don't want
If
to
you
write
see
anymore.
a ceiling, you should drill through it.
Just pierce straight through it.
Clearly.
You only limit yourself.
Exactly. So, and there have been two interesting pieces of news. Well, one personal one, I guess, is that I went to Katsucon this past weekend, which is an anime convention in Maryland. Got to go with some people in JCon. That was pretty cool. Got to meet some cool voice actors, go to some cool panels, bought some cool merch. So that was a fun way to spend the weekend.
What was the coolest thing you got?
Like merch-wise?
Yeah.
I would say I got a cool Fooly Cooly t-shirt that I really like,
That's a thing
and
we should really
some
do.
cheap anime DVDs.
Okay.
So that was good. But news-wise, Studio Trigger announced the title for the sequel to Little Witch Academia, Little Witch Academia: The
I've seen that
Enchanted
one, yeah.
Parade.
Ooh.
Yes,
I'd watch
that they did a Kickstarter for that for a while. I actually supported it, so I've kind of been getting the updates. So they finally announced the title. It's releasing this year. We don't know when, but it's coming out. So I'm looking forward to that because it's supposed to be like closer to 40 minutes long, I think. And the first one was really great, so I hope that the second one
I
will be
love the
great
animation
too.
style of it.
Yeah. Directed by one of the greats at Gainax, Yo-Yo Shinari, who's now with Trigger. And I think he's directing this one as well, so that should be exciting. The other big news is that Funimation, they started doing this simul-dubbing thing last season where they picked up two shows last season and basically dubbed them so that the new episode would be out about a month after, or like the episode of one of their streaming titles would be out dubbed about a month after it premiered on their website subbed. So now they're doing this again this season, but instead of doing 2 shows, they're doing 10. So they've really, they've really ramped up their game. They're doing stuff like Death Parade, Tokyo Ghoul, Yuri Kuma, Yona of the Dawn. You know, they've got a lot of their top shows they're dubbing. So this is, it's an interesting, unique thing that Funimation could do since they're a dubbing company that like Crunchyroll and Daisuke and Hulu and stuff can't. So it'll be interesting to see if that gives them an edge in like the streaming market kind of battle over anime. And now we're going to dive into the main topic for this week, which, as we talked about on last podcast, is Yuki Yuna is a Hero, which is a recent show from 2014 done by Studio Gokumi. Interesting, I was looking them up. The first thing they made was like in 2010, and most of the shows I honestly didn't even recognize. They haven't done a lot of like high budget stuff.
Profile?
Yeah, anything high profile. But this is like an original anime, so this is the thing I think that might really get them out on the map. The series composition was done by Makoto Uezo, which series composition basically means like the lead writer. But it was actually created, like the original concept and everything was created by a guy named Takahiro, which is the name of the guy who also does the story in Akame ga Kill, which is a manga series that got turned into anime as well. Directed by a guy named Seiji Kishi, and with music done by Keiichi Okaba of the group Monoka. And I was just looking all this up just because I really appreciate the creative staff that came and collaborated on this, because it's pretty rare that you get an original anime, especially one that's as good as this one. The soundtrack's actually available on iTunes, and I highly recommend that everybody go out there and buy it, because personally I really love the soundtrack. It's one of my favorites that I've heard in quite some time. So diving into our discussion on the show, in the first episode, we're just sort of thrown into this idea of the hero club. They're doing like this play for the kids, and just sort of setting up this kind of happy slice of life kind of setting. Even though if you've even read a little bit about the show, like the plot information, that it's a magical girl, action show, so that that's not going to last for very long.
They did a really good job of making it seem like the girls were all genuine friends and they liked being around each other, though. Like, just the puppet show at the very beginning did a great job of showing, like, they liked each other. They are friends.
It was totally a strength of the show, is that they did, nail that relationship down. Yeah. Like, very early on. Like, by episode 2, I was like, yeah, I believe you guys.
Yeah, friends. No, that's something I really do commend the show for, because, like, I feel like there's so many shows that, like, try to get that kind of group camaraderie, and then like struggle at it or fail at it. Whereas with this show, like, you immediately got the fact that these guys are friends and that they're really close, and they all had like engaging personalities, right off the bat, and I think it's pretty rare in anime that you see that sort of group camaraderie like happen so quickly and so effectively, and they really captured that in the writing of this show, I think. Also, in terms of the character designs, both their, normal forms and then, their magical girl outfits, I really like the looks of the characters. I don't know what it is, that makes them look different from your typical kind of like moe magical girl show, but I feel like they did a great job with like designing the characters to all look unique, but also cool at the same time.
I don't quite agree with that. I didn't find any of them especially unique, and we constantly referred to the eldest girl as just Mommy from Madoka.
Well,
there was a lot of comparisons the entire time watching it to Madoka, and then Ava eventually.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes, well the comparisons to Madoka are pretty immediately present, because Yuna has the pink color scheme just like Madoka does. Fu's the senpai and has yellow just like Mommy was. I was thinking that too.
There's the obsessive semi-lesbian relationship
dark-haired friend.
between
I don't think it's a semi-lesbian relationship.
It's super,
it's
super
pretty-
lesbian.
It's very much Yuri. Because it should be noted that you guys just watched the show like this past week. I was actually watching it week to week as it was airing throughout the fall season.
I remember you mentioning it a couple times last semester.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because like apparently it was one of the like top sellers of the season, like in Japan. It did really well financially for them, which is good to hear. But I don't remember anybody on the American side, at least, talking about it before the show came out. Like, it debuted a week after most of the other shows did, and I just sort of checked it out on the whim, was just sort of thinking like, oh, this actually looks pretty cool, I'll keep going, and then as it went along and, got into the more interesting stuff in the later part of the show, I really started getting invested in what it was doing. One other little detail that I like is that Togo, the Homura character, is paralyzed, in a wheelchair, but nobody ever like talks about it or treats her any differently for it. Yeah. It's just she's just normal, and it's not something you see in a lot of shows.
That was a nice.
It was a good touch
to her character.
Yeah. And then, we get to this cool kind of moment where time freezes and the like colorful wave kind of comes over the wall, and you get your first hints of like the cool like vocal music, in the show, that creepy kind of sound. And they get taken to this Junkai world, this kind of barrier world that's got all these crazy colors and like vines going with it. Learn they have to fight these vertexes, using.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, you can substitute it for any like monster they have to fight in a magical girl show.
Not everything spits out a core that they have to proceed to destroy.
Yeah, and the weird art design is kind of very
geometrical structure of a lot of them.
The angels and the fact that they're fighting to protect a god-like being from being touched by it, because or else that would end the world.
Yeah,
well, more kind of Ava.
Or like they destroy it, but yeah. I mean, no, it definitely has those similarities to Ava. Although a lot of magical girl shows will have at least elements of that. Let's fight the bad guy to save the world.
Yeah, we can't pretend that like Ava invented the concept of like protecting X, and like it's similar, but it's not like Ava made it, and we can't really slam it too hard for that.
And I do also like, I'm kind of a stickler for 2D animation, as I've talked about in the past on the podcast. And this show makes a pretty liberal use of 3D, both for the vertexes and then sometimes with the characters during the fighting scenes. And for me, making the vertexes 3D is fine, because they're consistent with it, and that's the aesthetic they're going for. They're supposed to be monstrous and unusual, so that all works. And then I think they do a good job with using the 3D with the actual magical girls, because they typically will only use the 3D when it's a wide shot. They don't do many close-ups with the 3D. If it's a close-up, it'll usually be drawn 2D style, and then if they're doing the 3D where they're jumping across, it's a super wide shot, so you can't really see the details, so you don't see the imperfections of the 3D. And I think that's an effective way to balance the two. I don't know. What did you guys think of their technique there?
The 3D definitely didn't bother me. I really loved the art design of the entire show. There were a lot of really pretty moments.
Mm-hmm. Certainly does. Definitely one of the moments I think that kind of hooked me with the show when I was watching the first episode was when Fu's fighting the one Vertex using her Buster Sword, but gets kind of beaten, and Yuna comes up and blocks the attack and is kind of transforming as she moves through the air, and then eventually just punches the Vertex to pieces. The music gets an awesome cue there. It was just a nice heart-pounding moment. Good way to end your first episode, I'd say. And then we get to the second episode where more is kind of explained about the world, or the mechanics of how everything works. You have to do this ritual, destroy the core of the vertex within a certain time limit, and how the damage that happens in the Junkai and the barrier world affects the real world, so they can't be willy-nilly with it.
I'm a little disappointed that they didn't ever do more with that,
Really?
the real world consequences.
They never really
they'd always
did.
say a bridge was destroyed, but there were no lives lost, or a building caught fire, or car crashes. They never really did anything with that.
Or even if they did, it never felt like it was a real impact. They never felt the weight of the consequences. It's not like one of their parents died for that or something, so they could actually feel some consequences for that. There was no. I frankly forgot that was a rule halfway through the show because it didn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter, although I did notice rewatching again, you see as they go along, they keep getting bigger in scale. It gets to the point where by the end of the show they cause a giant forest fire across an entire mountain, because of what happened.
They do.
Versus a car crash at the beginning. So you do see that, and it actually So Yuki Yuna is kind of a multimedia project. There are a couple. There's a prequel light novel for it that goes into Togo's past, and there's a PSP game, and as well as a manga adaptation, and all these different things. And I believe it's in the light novel where they explained that when the previous group. There's gonna be spoilers for the show, by the way, to all you listeners out there. No duh. When the previous group was fighting, they. Something of the repercussion from their battle impacted the real world, and that's what killed Fu and Itsuki's parents, and that's why she wants revenge on the Vertexes, because the Vertexes killed their parents. They were helping evacuate citizens from this accident or whatever, and they died in the process.
That'd be a really cool detail to have known in the show itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you knew the Vertexes killed her parents, you just didn't know how. And really, that's the only way.
Did they say ever that?
Yes, they did. They said in episode 4, Fu mentions, I wanted, the reason why I'm fighting is because I want revenge on the Vertexes for killing my parents.
Okay, then I just forgot that. I wish they made a bigger deal of it and mentioned it more than once.
I don't know. I think mentioning it once was enough, because that whole episode, because Itsuki in that episode was wondering why do I fight, because she's sort of questioning herself, and then Fu reveals to herself, she's just talking to herself or thinking in her head no, my reason for fighting isn't so noble, I just want revenge, kind of thing. And then throughout the after they beat the first Vertex, they kind of learn, once again establishing more about the world, the idea of the fairies, that there are 12 Vertexes. They borrow the Shinju's power in order to fight them, and Togo kind of gets mad at Fu for a little bit for keeping this secret from all of them, but Yuna goes and kind of cheers her up, You know, kind of getting that Yuri vibe from the two of them, even from episode 2.
Yep.
And Togo reveals in that she has a hole in her memory of 2 years, which is, you know, important kind of foreshadowing for what's going to come later.
Yep.
Also, a detail I liked is, like, you know, a bit later on, you know, they start do another fight against the Vertexes. This time there are 3 of them attacking at once. And every time you see, like, them hit the ground, you see, like, this kind of, like, little barrier burst, you know, that protecting them from the damage, you know, and, like, Yuki Yuna's fairy protects her from, like, the scorpion tail that one Vertex has in the second episode and, like, shields her. You know, so, like, from the very beginning, they're showing the idea that the fairies are protecting them, you know, once again, which is something that is, you know, an important plot point later.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do remember actually thinking that, like, when they start talking about, like, how the fairies are protecting them. Like, the fairy always did, like, just teleport in front of them every time before they got hit, so.
Exactly.
I was like,
You know.
yeah.
Yeah, like
a
this show does have really good world building, and I think they establish, like, the rules and the concepts for their world and then stick to it pretty closely. And what did you guys think, you know, by the end of that episode, you know, Togo, who's the only one who didn't transform in the previous episode because she's in a wheelchair and all that, you know, finally, like, gets kind of the courage to do it. You know, she had a cool transformation sequence, although they focus.
If by cool you mean she gets whipped and, like, BDSM'd and crucified and then transforms.
I don't know about crucified, but
she was splayed and then pinned, and then she transformed.
I mean, there were ropes, but it wasn't crucified.
Okay.
I wouldn't say. You know, but yeah, I mean, it definitely is a bit fan servicey, you know.
Also, they never make a very large deal of her bust until she transforms, and then it seems to develop from nowhere.
But of course, that's how it works in several different anime, unfortunately. And, you know, for the most part, the show, you know, avoided the fan service thing. It's basically just that, and then the hot spring little scene later on in the show. But for the most part, they avoid it, and I appreciate that, although, you know, it doesn't avoid it entirely. But I do like the fact that her feet don't touch the ground because she has, like, those 4 little arms that are poking out that stand for her.
Yeah. I mean, I did say that. I was like, oh, wow. So she doesn't actually gain her legs back. She just goes Dr. Octopus on this.
Exactly. You know, and another thing I noticed on rewatch, you see the fact that she has 3 fairies from the very beginning.
Yes.
And they change based on which gun she's using, because she has, like, her sniper. She's got, like, an assault rifle kind of one, and then, like, 2 pistols.
The kid.
Yeah.
Yes, the underhand pistols. You know, so that, once again, that's, like, a nice touch.
Especially considering she's, like, as you'll see later, she has reason to already have 2 fairies.
Exactly. You know,
And
like,
to have lost 2 things.
yeah, I know. I wasn't really, you know, on message boards and things like this early on in the show, but I know that there were people already from that point who were, like, starting to speculate about, like, what that could mean, you know, because everybody's trying to figure out, like, okay, we know this show isn't going to be this happy, like, what's really going on here. And just another detail I appreciate about the show is that both in the opening and ending for, like, the early episodes, they edit them so that they don't show, like, in the first opening, they don't show Karin or Togo, and, like, they don't show Karin at all, and they don't show Togo in, like, her magical girl outfit, you know, and then in the ending animation of episode 2, they don't show Karin. And I appreciate that because, like, so often in shows you'll see, you know, a character that's going to be introduced in episode 5, you know, in the first episode opening, it's like, okay, well, now I know that character's coming, you know. But this way, by editing it and then adding them in, once that character was actually introduced, it didn't spoil it for you.
Yeah.
Exactly. We all had a huge problem with that freshman year watching Digimon. They kept
God.
spoiling the
Oh,
evolution.
yeah. Yeah.
It was-
Ruined the reveal.
Oh, for, like, the ultimate level, did you?
No,
No,
it just ruined the
Angemon.
reveal for Angemon. Like,
Oh,
they're actually building
that's
up
right.
really
Like,
well.
what's he gonna be? Like, what's he gonna
Well,
come out as?
like-
And then,
The title also did that for that episode.
Yeah.
I remember
well,
that.
I mean, by that point, you're just like, you know, it's that episode. And you're like, okay.
yeah, if they like reveal it in the title of the episode, that's fine.
Yeah.
But, like,
Episode 1.
ruining
they
it
have him
in the
Digimon
credits
evolving.
or later on in the post credits, they reveal all of, like, the mega evolutions, blah blah blah. Not the
Right.
show we're talking about.
What a Digimon sidetrack. Impossible.
We never do that.
So then we have
No.
episode 3. They say it's about a month and a half since they first got the smartphones, and they're fighting the 5th Vertex, and Karin makes her entrance, you know, just slicing it up, says, you guys aren't needed anymore. I'm, like, the perfect hero because I've been trained for years by the Taisha and I have all of your battle data, and so I'm the best, and you guys should just stop.
And then they all look at themselves and say, cool,
no.
we'll go back to being cool friends.
Well, except though that Fu's like, well, you might be, awesome during battles, but here we're at school and I'm your senpai, so you still have to
So,
listen to me.
Get in line.
Get in line. That's right. And I don't know. I really like this. This was like the first episode, because I liked the first episode when I was initially watching it, but episode 3 really kind of drew me in because I think there was some really strong direction, like in terms of just portraying Karin's kind of growth through this episode. Like when she goes back to her house, and it's like totally like silent, and it's just this big empty apartment, and she's bringing food, not cooking it for herself. She trains on her treadmill, texts the Taisha about how, these guys aren't up to snuff.
Yeah, they don't realize the gravity of the situation, stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked how she was more serious about all of this, and I like where she ended up going, and her overall arc was really cool, because by the end she's texting the Taisha like, hey, can I stay here?
Yeah.
Like, can I stay with my friends?
Yeah. And she does definitely fill the tsundere archetype, because she's like, she pretends she doesn't care, but then she really does, because she's like practicing origami back at her apartment, and always acting really awkward whenever they try to do something nice for her.
Forgetting her own birthday and being really bothered by them giving her a birthday party.
Because she's never had a birthday party before,
She like cussed him out.
Well, once again, tsundere.
Yep, it was
Tsundere.
cute. Like, it was fun.
Yeah, and I also appreciate, like, the comedy throughout the show, I'd say it's like very solid comedy. Like, it didn't I don't think I ever like laughed out loud, like big belly laugh kind of thing. But I very frequently would chuckle or like smile at like one of the jokes they made. So I feel like it's not a comedic anime, and it's not trying to make you laugh all the time. But the jokes that they did make were usually pretty good. I don't know. What did you guys think of the comedic aspect of the show?
Overall, I smiled a lot during the beginning. Like, they did a really good job of setting up in the first few episodes. I would agree it's not comedic though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the episode kind of ends, it's kind of nice, you get the feeling that Karin really has kind of joined the group because she's in the ending animation, walking along the riverside with them, which is a nice touch. Then we get to episode 4, which is Itsuki's episode where she, can't sing very well and is struggling in class. And this is one I remember when I was first watching that kind of felt like it was out of place to me, because it's like, okay, I don't really care as much about you as a character. Can we move on? But then because of what happens later, it's actually like an extremely important episode.
Yeah, I would say it's she is probably one of the characters I liked most out of the show, because she like grew the most.
She did grow a lot, for sure, because she started kind of low and meek, and so early on I wasn't as big of a fan of her, but like you said, her growth and what she did by the end, really made her into a great character. I thought there was a nice moment where they were doing karaoke and as a group, and Togo, when she got her chance, she started singing like the national anthem or something, and they all saluted, and Karin was just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
That was the
What,
side
you
of Togo
don't do that?
Yeah, because Togo talks about the nation a lot. Like, she
Yeah.
has this interest in history.
And like
Yes.
she was really militaristic in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Which is a weird like juxtaposition from like the meek girl who wouldn't who wouldn't get in the damn robot,
Right.
quote unquote.
Yeah. And there was another kind of funny moment where they were trying to heal Itsuki's voice, and Karin brought all these throat medications and started drinking them all at once, and the
Proceeded
text
to vomit.
the text came on screen like, don't try this at home. Seriously, this is a bad
I
idea.
appreciated that.
Yeah. That was a moment where I didn't like openly laugh. It was fun.
Yeah. And like I said before, this is the episode, Itsuki has this little flashback where she's like these, creepy men like telling her, her and Fu, that her parents died, and so kind of bringing a bit of a darker edge into the episode, which I think was wise, because it had been kind of a little, lighthearted, more slice of lifey up to that point. That there's a song that plays there. I think it's called Usuyuki So. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it's like, I don't know which language it is. I want to say it's German or something. It's like this really kind of slow, melancholy song that's playing through that whole scene, and that's like my favorite track in the whole OST. Like, it's so good. I love the music in this show. And then, by the end of the episode, she's at the choir club. She opens up that paper from all of them. It's basically encouraging her, saying, we'll be with you, we're supporting you, kind of thing, and then she's able to sing good because she had been shown before that she sang great when she was alone. It was just dealing with the fear of people that really made her mess up. Also a little detail I guess I forgot. They go give like this cat they're taking a cat from some people who don't want it anymore, I believe. And then like this girl starts crying because she doesn't want to give up on it. And then when they're walking back, Fu mentions that reminded her of maybe what she should have done with the Taisha, like not letting Itsuki get involved, because she kind of already this early on in the show has some serious guilt with like getting her involved in the hero club, which I think it's good, that they're laying the seeds for that this early.
Yep.
Yeah. So she doesn't tell Fu about like her dream to sing, says it's a secret, and then the ending animation plays and it's Itsuki singing that song, which is a nice touch, and then by the end of the credits, you actually cut to her like realizing that she's been recording it on her laptop, she's sending it into this music competition. Fu mentions that she wants revenge for her parents, and then, like the phone starts buzzing and like there's a vertex attack coming, we cut to black, next episode. And then we get to episode 5, which is definitely the episode that really kind of drew me in, like, because I guess it's weird that I keep saying that, because like I liked episode 1, but it didn't like totally grab me. And then episode 3 was like I was starting to really like the show because I really liked the way they portrayed Karin's character in that episode and the way it was directed and everything. But episode 5, which was the battle heavy episode, was the one where I was like, all right, I'm digging this show because they have to fight 7 vertexes at once.
But that's like the rest of them, if I'm correct. Like,
yeah,
they've already fought 5. They fight 7 then, so that's like
that's
12.
That's all 12.
We're all pretty confused. Like, so
why is
show's over?
So, all right, guys, show's over. Let's go home. High fives all around.
Exactly. Well, that's what was interesting about it, watching it week to week. Because once again, as soon as I kind of saw it and got the idea of like, you're hearing the creepy music and they're fighting these vertexes and there's like this real danger going on, you got the feeling that this wasn't just some silly slice of life happy-go-lucky magical girl show. So I was very much thinking in the Madoka vibe because I love Madoka. So I was expecting like, episode 3, like, if Fu's gonna be mommy, she's gonna die by episode 3.
Or are they gonna kill the sister who's like starting to show like a future?
Or I thought if I was wondering if they're gonna kill Karin, because the fact that she wasn't in the opening made me think, you're not an important character, so you're gonna die by the end of this episode. But she didn't, and so the show kept on kind of messing with me a bit, because I thought for sure like, they're fighting 7 vertexes in this battle, like somebody's got to die by the end, right? And then nobody died, and I was like, what the heck? They beat them all. We're 12 up, they beat the 12 vertexes and we're only 5 episodes into a 12 episode series. Like, what the hell? But it kept you on your toes because of that, and I think it was really effective at doing that.
But they mega evolve.
They do.
Yeah. Some of them mega
well,
evolve.
no, they combine. 4 of them combine in like this one mega vertex.
I was more alluding to the Mankai.
Well, yeah, the Mankai. I forgot to mention that had been referenced back in episode 3. They talked about it as in, getting battle experience, leveling up. They do, even in episodes 1 and 2, they're showing like when they defeat the vertexes, like they defeat the cores and like these lights, shoot up from the core and go away. And they get petals on the flowers that are on their uniforms, like when they defeat one, they'll get a petal kind of thing. So they're just subtle, kind of visually just showing you these things that you don't think anything about at first, but it comes into play here. And the first time, like, I think Fu's the first one to go Mankai, she's got her awesome, Buster Sword again.
Yes.
That was awesome. Togo's is particularly cool, I think. She's just got like this gun platform.
On a battleship.
Basically.
That was pretty epic.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably my favorite one.
Yeah. I don't know. I like Yuna's a lot too.
Yuna's was excellent. The giant fists.
Exactly. Itsuki kind of had her cool super wires that she used to stop that one, the 7th vertex that was like small but fast and was running towards the Shinju, which was nice. And they they do the ritual on the one giant one, only for it to unleash a core that's like the size of the moon floating up in space. And this was the part of the show where I was like, this is getting to be a little Gurren Lagann almost.
Yeah, it was getting a little over the top.
But I liked it for that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't expecting to go like that over the top and ridiculous, but it did, you know. And then Togo and Yuna go up into space, you know, on like her gun platform, and Yuna does her Mankai, you know, the giant fist just pounding the hell out of that soul, you know, to the point where she like starts screaming like the tenants, the Hero Club 5 tenants, you know, as she hits the core and makes it explode. You know, they fall down in like this flower back down to earth, and Itsuki has to use like a ton of her strings to slow it down enough so they don't die when it like crashes. You know, so it's just a really well directed episode, great fight scenes, you know, kind of a interesting little moment where at the end, like, they've all gone out of their Mankai, and Karin's like, guys, are you okay, guys? You know, because she's the only one who didn't go Mankai, and they're all kind of silent for a bit. And you kind of wonder, oh my God, are they dead? And then they, you know, say that they're fine.
And then it's eventually revealed that they all lost something.
Exactly.
But something small. And this is where one of my problems with the show comes in. If it really is trying to be darker and more serious, it's not doing a hugely good job of it. Like, it's still really just bubblegum Pinky to me. Like, they've lost something, but it's all pretty inconsequential with the exception of the younger sister's voice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Itsuki's is obviously the worst. And like Togo, you know, losing hearing in an ear, like that.
Oh, well.
That sucks, but that's like the least painful of them. You know, losing your sense of taste and losing one of your eyes, I definitely think those are pretty serious
I
consequences.
mean, they're serious, but like the girls pretty much universally brush them off as if they're nothing. And since that is what happens, the viewers brush it off like it's nothing.
Well, I did
like,
not.
You see that, and it's like, oh, well, if they're not going to overreact to it, and it's not showing any signs of getting worse, like, clearly it's not going to actually get better like they're saying it is.
Oh, yeah.
But the show's, like, if the show's pretending that it's going to get dark at some point and get more serious, it's doing so in a very, very slow manner, especially considering they've done nothing but succeed so far.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was what was interesting about it, because I was like, okay, they beat the 12 Vertexes. We're at episode 5. You know, we've got bunch of more episodes of the show. What are they going to do? You know, but then pretty early on in episode 6, they say, you know, they're at the hospital and they say, oh yeah, you know, Fu has the eye patch, you know, Itsuki can't talk. You know, I thought it was kind of cool. Even at the end of episode 5, you know, when all of them are saying they're okay, Itsuki doesn't talk, you know, kind of. So maybe even by that point she's lost her voice. But that's what I immediately kind of came to, like, okay, so the show isn't killing people Madoka style, but instead it's going to introduce this idea that going Mankai takes away one of your like bodily functions, and it's not going to get better, and there's just this kind of like unease building throughout. You know, episode 6 and 7 are like kind of slice of lifey, but there's kind of this unease throughout it.
Slow and largely unnecessary. Yeah.
I was like, by the end of what was it, episode 7, I was like, why is this show still on?
Like,
what's going on?
The
Like, where is
7th
this
episode
going?
is what really did it for me, because it was just a beach and onsen episode, and like, oh, good, we're building their friendship more. Like, I already believe that they're friends. You don't need to keep convincing me that they're friends. I would like to see maybe them argue about something. Maybe one of like some genuine character flaws would be nice. But like I would like to see something more than 2 episodes of filler after you beat the bosses.
Well, I agree with you that episode 7 is the more primary offender, because episode 6 does have a lot of plotty stuff, because you have like Togo has like that spreadsheet, you know, on her computer, and she's like pointing out the fact, you know, we're not getting better, you know, she talks to Fu about it, you know, she texts the Taisha, you know, so that episode's more focused on their
but they repeat
bodily
the scene
losses.
of like they repeat the scene of like, oh, our things aren't better. Text the Taisha say nothing's wrong. Okay. 2 weeks later, we check the sheet. Nothing's better. Text the Taisha say nothing's wrong. They do that like 3 times in the episodes. Like, it's slow.
They don't do it that many times.
They don't do it 3 times in the episode. They do it like at least 3 times throughout the series.
Yeah, well, like later in episode 9, Fu texts the Taisha again, but that's because at that point she's really starting to get desperate. Like, please give us an answer on this. I'm reading here about what else happened in episode 6. Oh, the other big thing with episode 6 was Karin got some nice development because she doesn't go to the hero club because she feels like, one, she feels guilty because she didn't go Monkai and she didn't have anything bad happen to her, so she's guilty about that. And two, she feels like useless because she came here as like an agent of the Taisha to fight, and now the fight is over, so now what does she do? But Yuna says, quotes one of the tenants, where was it? If you're troubled, talk to someone. That's one of the 5 tenets they had. And she talks about how you need to come back to the club. Because you're a member of the hero club. You're not just a member of the Taisha. I really like you. That whole thing. And Karin kind of gets convinced to come back. Taisha let her come back. All that kind of thing. And then episode 7 is like the most slice of lifey episode of the whole show, because like you say, it's the beach episode, the onsen. They have their big meal. Although
they show you the pretty food. Look at the pretty food. Look how pretty it is.
Yeah. Although once again, it's not. Nothing in the show is completely devoid of moving the plot forward, because there's a few really important things that happened in episode 7.
But that's not enough to make the episode worth it,
I guess. But it's interesting because Yuki Yuna isn't Madoka Magica. For as many comparisons as there are, Yuki Yuna focused way more on the slice of life aspect than Madoka ever did.
It focuses primarily on the relationship between the friends, and I understand that, but the relationship could be done more with if they decided to give them character flaws or reasons to argue or do something other than hey, let's be the bestest friends ever, guys.
I guess. I know. I guess I wasn't bothered. I mean, when I was watching the show week to week, because I had to wait a week, between 5 and 6, and then to 6 and 7, and I said, I knew there was this kind of unease going out throughout all the slice of life stuff, because they're eating the food at the hotel, and then you're reminded, oh yeah, Yuna can't taste anything, and so that kind of brings things down for a second, So you knew that this wasn't going to last. And you knew that it was building to something, and so I think this was kind of, it's they're breather episodes. We had this really epic fight in episode 5. So we get this breather. We get these kind of happy moments with them. Like you said, building up the relationships more. Before we get into from episode 8 through the end of the show. I mean, it's tragedy nonstop. So I feel like this was their last chance to kind of remind you of the happiness in the show to make you sadder when the sad things happen.
But since the entire beginning was nothing but happiness, why did they need more happiness to remind you that the happiness was happy?
Well, the first 4 episodes weren't totally slice of life. They mixed slice of life with the more serious bits, and the character development and just establishing all that stuff about the world. Episode 4, the Itsuki episode, the singing episode, is definitely, I think that does, is pretty slice of life. But once again, that was all setting that up so that episode 9 could happen, it all does dovetail in one way or another. And there's actually a line that's extremely important to what happens in episode 12 that I totally missed when I first watched the show, but then looking back on it later, it's oh, that's actually really important. Fu wants to eat more food and has this joking line where she looks up and sees the food perched on the Shinju-sama shrine and says, it's okay to eat offerings after they've been there for a while, right? And then somebody else says, yes, but let's not, But just establishing that idea of that you can take the offerings back is key to what happens in episode 12. So I think it's pretty clever of them that in this silly comedic moment they throw in a line that you totally skip over when you're just watching the show, but that is actually key to what happens later. And there's a nice scene with Togo and Yuna when she wakes up early in the morning, and Togo's there looking out at the sea. There's this really beautiful shot, and Yuna and Togo kind of talk about some interesting kind of world building stuff about the vertexes, how they're based on constellations, and there's more than 12 constellations, so is the battle really over? And Yuna says, well, if that's so, we'll deal with it when the time comes, don't worry about it right now, which is an aspect I really like about her character, because she's very much the willful girl who never gives up, always kind of,
I am always happy, I am always happy, I am always happy.
She's always positive, but something of the way they wrote her didn't make her feel like a cliche to me, like that. She says, we'll worry about it when the time comes. She's being pragmatic, don't get too caught up with, worrying about things that might happen. Just live in the now, kind of thing. So I really like her character, and she plays well off of Togo because Togo's the most intelligent and kind of brooding one of them all, for sure.
She really did just seem more like a cliche to me, personally.
Yeah. To each his own. I wasn't too bothered by her, especially given what she does, later on in the show, but we'll get to that. They talked about how the Shinju-sama saved humanity from a virus, which apparently decimated a lot of the population. It makes the barrier that keeps the vertexes out weak at a certain point on purpose so that they kind of just to focus the attacks on that one point, because if the Shinju used all of its power for defense, humanity wouldn't be alive. Talk about how the Shinju is the source of their blessings, all this stuff, and Yuna even is combing Togo's hair and says, don't keep troubles to yourself, quoting that tenet from the Five Clubs again, which once again gets brought up later, with what Togo ends up going to do. And then at the end of the credits, Fu gets the phones again, they know Vertexes are coming again. She has a new fairy and kind of touches her eye and is like, oh, there's a new battle coming or some such, And episode 8, which is the big kind of revelation episode, they all have new fairies with their new phones, so kind of going into the idea that, Mankai gives you a new fairy, new powers. Yuna uses her new fairy to do that, fire kick attack that destroys the vertex they fight in that episode.
And the fairies are more or less devoid of any sort of personality, so that's good.
Well, it depends. You have some, Yuna's fairy, Yuki, definitely has personality. Karin's has a little bit. I mean, the cute side mascot characters. Did you expect a lot from them?
I feel like they eat up space.
I guess. I don't know. They were there to look cute, but then also serve an important plot point role. Because they serve an important plot role, I think it's okay that that they weren't just there to look cute. They did serve a purpose. It is interesting. They're all really scared of going Mankai and kind of reluctant to do so because they're worried about what's going to happen to them. And Fu and Karin are both thinking no, I'll be the one to finish it off. But then Yuna kind of jumps in there and does it anyway. Adding 3 more petals to her flower gauntlet. And so they're kind of frustrated with her about that because well, you're getting yourself closer to Mankai. We don't want you to do that. Blah blah blah. And then Togo and Yuna get called. Instead of going back to the roof on top of the school, they end up by this broken bridge where they meet Sonoka, who says, oh, you're here, Washi, which apparently, I guess, means eagle, because Togo mentions that.
It was also a shorter version of the name she was going by.
Yeah, her last name was Washio back in the day. So Washi, that's her nickname. And this, I kind of known that we were gonna eventually get an episode where it was explained that they weren't gonna get better and that this system was corrupt and blah blah blah. And so this was the episode where that happened.
Corrupt or effective.
Well, that's what's interesting about it. It's corrupt but effective.
Is it really corrupt?
Is it corrupt?
Yeah.
What is the question I started asking by the end of this?
I mean, there's no other option, and it's letting all of these people live. I know it sucks to be you, but you are necessary for it to happen.
Which was
but they deceive them about it. I think that's the big thing.
Hey, I'm going to explain to you. I'm sorry. This is gonna. I'm gonna tell you this. You're gonna have to give up. You're gonna have to fight an unending war, and you're gonna have to give up at least one of your senses at a time, so you literally cannot move anymore. But you're never gonna die. So
you're just gonna live there in eternal
live in
suffering,
unending suffering for the rest of your eternal life, so that everybody else doesn't die.
But don't worry, we'll worship you.
But you can sign right here.
Yeah, and we'll worship you once you are a lifeless husk.
Yeah, but Yuna and Togo both said it would be. Yuna said to Fu later in episode 9, I would have joined even if I knew, because it's the right thing to do. Togo said I would have been fine with it if I was the only one suffering. Fu said, I wouldn't have asked you guys to join if I knew, the truth about the system. So in the cases of a lot of them, they would have done it even if they knew what was, the consequences because it was the right thing to do. And I think Sonoka even said that maybe the Taisha keeping it a secret is a kindness, but then she follows that up by saying, I wish I had known, so I could have spent more time with my friends, crying as she kind of looks at Togo, establishing that a little bit. And like I said, I was expecting this episode to happen. I was expecting the explanation to happen, but I was still pretty like wide-eyed when we saw Sonoka and she like has like one arm and like no legs and like half a face. Like it was brutal, and to hear her talking like this just very quiet voice, about her suffering and everything.
the fact that she can still talk.
Yeah.
She rolled well, I guess.
Apparently.
I'm glad that the episode happened. I'm annoyed that it took this long to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, from episode 6, you knew that,
Something
something
was up.
bad was going to happen.
Yeah.
So basically your issue is episode 7. Like
My issue is that there's a lot of dead space in a lot of the episodes that is unnecessary based off of the things they've already done, and the pacing is really, really slow.
It is slow, but I think it's because Yuki Yuna is an interesting beast, I think, because it's like combining a few different aspects, right? It's combining action-focused magical girl battles with, happy slice of life, girls having fun kind of things with a really dark, tragic backstory and, depressing later part, all sort of combined into one.
But it never gets that that mega dark depressing.
Episode 9 was definitely mega dark depressing.
Was it though?
Yes, it was.
It was largely happy until they get whisked. Do they get whisked away to the rooftop at the end of the previous episode?
No, they get whisked away to the rooftop in
9.
In episode 8. Episode 8, they get whisked they don't go to the rooftop, they go to the bridge where Sonoka is. They talk. Episode 9 is the one that focuses on Fu and Itsuki, and she freaks out. And no, that episode hit me hard. And then
Really?
what happens like yes,
Really? That hit you hard?
are you kidding me?
Alex,
That episode was great.
I know what it was. It was hitting me over the head with how hey, she's like really trying hard to sing. Like, here's all these books, and then here's these emails, and then here's these recipes,
and here's the phone call,
and then here's the phone call, and here's a voice recording from her. I'm like, okay, you could have accomplished this without half the fluff. I get it. You're trying to make me sad, but you're trying too hard, and it's actually taking me out of it.
See, I completely disagree. It like totally worked for me. I cried at the end of that episode.
Really?
Yes, really.
Oh, good lord.
I don't know. That's all I could say. It was really effective for me. It was like paced really well. Like the silence when they were eating dinner together, and you just sort of felt that awkwardness.
That I did like. That was cool.
Like that episode was just really well directed, in my opinion. Like really came together well by the end. Going back to episode 8 for just a second, I thought it was interesting how they talked about, because I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe Mankai, like in Japanese, translates to something to do with flowers, and they talked about how flowers bloom and then they fall. That's the sange, the after effects. We had seen in the opening, all of the girls are shown like in flowers, and then those flowers like crumpled apart. So even in the opening, they're like hinting at this thing from the very beginning. And they talk about how innocent girls have always been sacrificed to gods because of their purity, throughout all of time. Exchange for power, we give body parts as offerings. The Shinju-sama is on humanity's side, but it is a god. It requires sacrifices in order to grant this great power to you. Except they sometimes say sacrifices, but oftentimes they do use the word offerings, offerings to God, which is important for what happens later, because a lot of people don't understand that about the 12th episode. Then, like I said, episode 9, this is my favorite episode of the show, personally. Like, it really hit me hard, with just the way it kind of slowly built throughout the episode, like I said, with the silent dinner scene, Itsuki turning down her friends because she can't go do karaoke with them, the teacher talking to Fu about getting worried about Itsuki's grades at school, and we get kind of in the middle there, Togo brings Yuna and Fu over and tries to kill herself and gets stopped by the fairy, and kind of revealed that these fairies don't let us die, both in battle and in real life, and they bind us to our duties, basically. Which I thought was like I said, that's a clever twist, making the fairies relevant. I don't know, what'd you guys think of that?
I thought that the preventing them from committing suicide, the keeping them alive thing was interesting. that added a layer of darkness to the world.
Yeah.
But with the having to give up their senses.
Mm-hmm.
Albert, yeah, it was cool, but otherwise it was like, okay, so now you're telling us that you guys are immortal, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're doing that well. You're doing that like in a way that like keeps drama going, even though because like it undercuts any like sense of danger that any of the things can do to you because you guys are literally immortal now. Like they're really like now these angels literally can't kill you. So
Vertexes.
the Vertexes, angels, whatever.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I get the feeling that like if one of those giant sun attacks hit them dead on, like and their whole bodies were disintegrated, they would. No, actually, that's true. They can die because in that Washio Sumi is a Hero, which is the prequel light novel that I was talking about, which basically focused on Togo, Sonoka, and a third girl who was like the trio that fought in the past over that 2-year period. That third girl died. Like she died in combat. So it is. I haven't actually read the light novel myself, but it is possible for them to die in battle.
They can die. It's just really hard for them to die.
And presumably they would live forever in the real world.
Yes.
In
Would have
theory,
been lovely to use some of that excess pacing to tell us some of this information from the light novel.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works. Like if the light novel was written as it was going or after, or how much they knew about that information. Because there are certain details I wish they had added, certainly to the anime that I learned from other sources. At the same time, it is like a multimedia project, so I get that. Like you get to find out the truth about this cool detail about the anime, so go read the light novel. That encourages you to go buy that light novel.
in theory, you to kill them, what you'd have to do is just attack them for more points than the head fairies,
Yeah, that would probably end up working.
because
The fairies are what's
there's
blocking it.
nothing to suspect that
Except,
the fairies.
but the fairies, it's been shown they can make like a full force field around their entire body.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that would work either. Like I think Andrew's
I
right.
don't
You
know.
really have to try hard to kill these guys.
I didn't really
really
start
do.
paying attention to them getting not injured until they pointed that out. At which point it was always just the physical fairy getting in the way.
Yeah. And then, as we were talking about, there's like, once again, I like the direction because it's like very well like shot, lighting is nice with like the sunset and it's just like completely silent. There's no soundtrack as she like gets that phone call from like the music company, goes into her room, sees all the things about I'm going to get better, and then listens to the recording that she did where she talks about how, she wanted to stand by her sister's side, and her friends made her want to sing, and she wants to spread her singing to everyone in the world, and then the song starts, and Fu starts crying and screaming and, like, runs away and gets into a fight with Karin and Yuna, and I don't know. Obviously, it wasn't for you guys, but for me, like, that was a really the episode built really well to that point because you knew that Fu was going to freak out like at a certain point, but it just kind of built that tension and built the anger within her over time so that when she freaked out, you were like pretty on board with her because it's like, yeah, you're pretty justified in freaking out about this at this point. And, so Yuna eventually, stops Fu, physically, getting more flower petals as she does it, and Itsuki like shows her the paper like that, if it wasn't for the Hero Club, I wouldn't have started to sing at all. So, don't feel guilty about starting the Hero Club, and they all start crying and it kind of goes into the ending animation again where Fu's kind of song continues, Itsuki's song continues through that into the after credits scene where like Itsuki's singing and like with karaoke with all of them, and the song ends and like that episode was close to being perfect in my mind. Like it really executed on all fronts in a great way. Then we get to episode 10, which starts with Togo attacking, the alarms start ringing out, and you see Togo on top of the wall, and she says that she's going to save everybody. And we kind of do this flashback. We see Togo when she was
full crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, when she was younger, her mom said, "You can do something for the Shinju-sama," and then she basically wakes up 2 years later in a hospital bed and has lost the use of her legs. She got transferred to the Washio family, who's like high up within the Taisha, because she had the high aptitude, fought for 2 years, lost her memory, lost her legs because of Mankai, came
Hence
back.
her 3 fairies instead of 1.
Exactly. The fact that, her parents got like the nicer house, and then she moved next to Yuna, all planned by the Taisha. That once again bringing in that creepiness to episode 7. The Taisha was sending them to this hotel, giving them the nice food because they're worshiping them, because they're becoming closer to God because they did Mankai. Like that makes that episode a little bit more disturbing in a way, because when you realize what the Taisha is actually all about, we see Togo's like first suicide attempt, when she was trying to test out, what the limits of the fairies were, and then she goes and talks to Sonoka again, and they talk about how, sacrifice is necessary, and how she's on Togo's side, like no matter what she chooses to do. I have 21 fairies, and the Taisha keep my phone away from me because they're scared of me. But I'm supposed to be here as like a safeguard to stop heroes in case they go crazy,
There was one scene in that part of that bothered me, and it's when she's about to, the girl in bandage is about to tell Toko this big secret, and then the phone rings and it covers it up. It's like, okay, so you're going to reveal this to us later, and then they reveal it to us 2 minutes later.
Right.
Like that. Why do that? That is pointless.
I don't know. I think that was actually pretty effective, because you see it in some anime where like, somebody like says something to somebody else, but then they don't like even cover it up. They just open their mouth, but no sound comes out. Whereas in this case, they had Yuna's phone call come in to like believably, overpower what she was saying, which I think was effective. And I suppose I see what you're saying, in that like the mystery.
You get the information 2 minutes later, so why withhold it during that scene? It just takes you out of the scene.
I think it works in that because you see the look on Togo's face, that this is a really bad thing, and then
you're reading the subtitles and you're trying to figure out what's going on contextually, and then you realize it's a phone call and that they're just jipping you out of information.
Right. Well, basically, they didn't want to reveal the big secret about the world through Sonoka telling it to Togo. They wanted to reveal it by having you, the audience, actually see it. I think that was much more effective than if Sonoka just said, yeah, they're outside of this barrier. There's the living hell where vertexes are created unendingly and gods are trying to kill us. It was more effective for us to actually see it.
Or she could tell her, Toko, go look outside the barrier and you'll understand.
Or they could have the scene of Togo looking outside the barrier with the voiceover of the other girl explaining it.
Yeah, then you just like hard cut to her being outside the barrier, and then she's saying it, saying the information, and we cut back to that scene, so you get both sides.
They do. I think they do something like that, because she goes to past the barrier, sees everything, and she starts fighting some of the vertexes that are like attacking her. And you hear Sonoka's voice comes in and like narrates about like the history of that whole series of events. So you hear what Sonoka was saying
2 minutes later,
after the facts.
But then like, why didn't it just like place that there?
I don't know. It didn't bother me personally. I can see what you're saying, that Sonoka could have just said, go to the barrier, you'll learn the truth there, and it would have served the same purpose, but it didn't bother me personally the way they did it.
Admittedly, this is kind of a weird thing for me picking on. It bothered me.
Yeah. I did kind of like also how like there was they were like showing only her bed, and then like it expanded like this wider shot, and you saw like all of like those weird like white things like pasted around her room, like with the worship. Was that what they were?
They're basically talismans, yeah.
Okay. With going with the whole worship thing again, just like cool little creepy reveal there. And then, her stepping outside, seeing that hellish landscape, like the music gets all like grand and chorusy there, which was nice. And they talk about how, once again, kind of close to the angel thing, how vertexes are the apex of life, sent by the heavenly gods to cleanse humanity from the world. But then the gods who supported the humans combined their powers to create the Shinju, and this tree to safeguard them, and the Taisha heard God's voice, and then the fact that vertexes regenerate without end, and that there's no end to this battle. Because before then, everybody had been coming to terms with their the
retirement.
Yeah, like it sucks that we've lost these physical abilities, but it's over. There aren't any more vertexes, so this is
except for that one that showed up again for reasons that weren't really explained.
Well, we know now that it was just regenerated and sent again. They thought, oh, what if this is like they're like twins, you know? So there was like another one just like it, you know? Like they weren't able to extrapolate the truth just from seeing that vertex. They thought, okay, well now this is the last one, so we killed 13 vertexes, but now it's over, you know? But then this reveal that the suffering's going to continue, the cycle's going to repeat itself without end, is what pushes Togo over the edge. You know, to the point that she blows a hole in the wall and says, I'm going to save you all by killing the Shinju.
And everything else.
And ending everything. Which, you know, I know looking online, some people, like, really didn't buy that from Togo's character. But personally, I think she was developed throughout the series as, like, this very kind of... she was always the one who was trying to learn the truth, you know, kind of like Homura. You know, she was the one who was making the Excel document about their... you know,
illnesses.
About their illnesses, you know, the one who got upset at Fu for not telling them the truth. You know, she's always been that kind of character. And in the case of Togo, she has personal experience because she did lose 2 years of her memory because of Mankai. And that's what she's scared of more than anything. The idea that she would lose her memories of Yuna and her friends, and that, you know, she would have to suffer without even knowing that, you know, that they were friends, you know, losing her memories of all that. Like, that terrifies her more than anything. And that's why she thinks it'd be better for us to just die than to repeat this endless hell, basically. So, I don't know. I mean, obviously you didn't agree with her, but at the same time, I could see where she was coming from. You know.
It did make a level of sense for her character to be doing that. And it made sense that it was just as easy to get her out of it, more or less. Like, it just took, like, a bit of punching and, you know.
Yeah, well, because how Yuna gets her out of it is basically by just saying, I'm not going to forget. Yes, you are. I'm not going to forget. Yes, you are. I'm not going to forget. You know, there's no logic to, like, Yuna doesn't convince Togo with logic.
It's through passion.
It's just emotion. Because Togo doesn't really want to do this, you know. And she says, really? You know, like, I'll believe in you, Yuna, you know, which almost backfires on her, but we'll get to that. And so we get to this point, you know, during episode 11, you know, they start fighting with Togo. Karin and Yuna both get, like, knocked away by, like, this Vertex attack, and Yuna can't transform because she's full of all this self-doubt, not wanting to fight
I thought she was
Togo.
out of cell phone service. Like, I thought that's what the phone said. It's like, nope, you're out of service. Just no data.
You're out of range. Sorry. It's over.
I thought the phone actually did say that.
No, I mean, it's sad, you know, because of emotional instability, cannot connect with the Shinju-sama, something like that. And then cross-cutting with that, we have Fu and Itsuki, where Fu is, like, curled up in a ball, not wanting to do anything, and Itsuki is the one who kind of, like, stands in front of her, you know, defending her, kind of making that point, like, oh, wow, you're not even standing beside me, you're standing in front of me, you know, and Fu kind of gets the courage to fight again, you know, and the two sisters kind of start doing things, which was, you know, like you said, great moment for Itsuki's character, kind of showing how she had grown. And similarly, Karin kind of advises Yuna and talks about how she's not going to fight as a member of the Taisha, she's going to fight as a member of the Hero Club, you know, kind of fully integrating her into, I'm not fighting for the world, I'm fighting for my friends kind of thing. And says that she doesn't want to see Yuna cry, you know, you're the only one who can stop Togo, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes and does her quadruple Mankai attack, which
goes Viral's mech from Gurren Lagann, forearms, giant swords.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite Mankais, and I will say I really love her character. We haven't talked about her much in the show, but she is also one of the characters that, like, actually went through a level of an arc.
No, she
and,
definitely
like,
goes
developed
through an arc
throughout the show, and since she actually had, like, some character flaws of, like, super cocky and loner and all that, I liked her a lot more.
Yeah, no, I think you know, episode 3 was a great way to introduce her character, you know, and that conversation she had with Yuna in episode 6 was a really good, like, kind of turning point. You saw her warming up to them, you know, becoming less tsundere as things went on. And then this, which is, you know, definitely action-wise my favorite part of the show, because, you know, she does Mankai 4 different times, takes out 6 vertexes, and just a series of attacks as she's screaming the 5 tenets of the Hero Club. You know, I especially like the one where she said, like, you know, don't give up. After she, like, tried to attack the vertex, it stopped her, and then she just, like, kicks it and, like, smashes through it or something. You know, that was just awesome action moment. But then, of course, there's got to be the repercussion of that, and she falls down to Yuna and has lost both her ears and her eyes.
And her legs.
Did she lose her
She
legs?
did lose her legs and
No,
an
she
arm.
lost one leg and an
Her
arm.
leg and an arm.
See, it was weird with that because, like, while she was doing the Mankai, you saw those, like, things appearing, like, on her arm, on her leg, like you were talking about. But then when she was talking with Yuna, she said, I lost my ears and my eyes. So you're thinking left, right eye.
She had to restart like multiple times, more than twice. So she had to like restart her Mankai multiple times because she
Right.
kept getting knocked out of it.
Well,
so she definitely lost more than 2 things out of it.
Well, the way I see it, because think about it, Fu lost one eye, Togo lost one ear from going Mankai. So she went Mankai 4 times. She lost both her eyes and both her ears. That's
But-
the way I look at it.
Before long, Yuna's gonna go Mankai like twice, and then she goes brain dead.
Well, yeah, but there's a reason for that, and we're going to get to that.
I always thought the Karen thing was that, because she does lose her arm because like at one of the times she attacks the thing, she like puts the sword in her mouth, and he like swings at it.
Yeah, well, like you said, I honestly don't quite get it because as she's doing the Mankai during the actual battle, there's like those weird bands like appear
Yeah.
around one of her arms and one of her legs, and like you said, she fights with the sword. But then although then again thinking on again in episode 12 you do see her with like a crutch, just like a single one at one point.
Yeah.
So maybe she did lose like the arm on the leg, like you said. You know, all she said to Yuna there was my eyes and my ears, and she didn't really mention
That's
the arms
what she
and
was
legs.
thinking about at the time.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you really can't do anything at that point. Like that really sucks.
I can
You know.
still talk.
Yeah.
You there? Is it
Yeah.
Yuna? No, it's Togo, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's Togo.
yeah.
I forgive you, Togo.
I should also mention that just in general, like all 5 of these girls, the voice actresses, they really do put on great performances, like at the emotional moments, like that one. You know, because Karin like says, you know, I'm nothing but a tool, you know, but you know, I fought and did something good. Thank you, Yuna. You know, you have to go stop Togo because you're the only one who can. You know, because you care about her. Blah blah blah. You know, then Fu and Itsuki are fighting against Togo. Togo goes Mankai, you know, takes them out. And then you see that super huge Vertex shows up, and she kind of gets in front of it and makes it shoot like that sun blast that's going to destroy the Shinju until Yuna shows up and stops it and says, you know, I'm going to stop you, Togo. You know, end of the episode. We get to episode 12, last episode.
Yuko Yuna is a hero.
Indeed, she is a hero. You know, I kind of liked it because she goes Mankai and like hits that giant Vertex and exposes its soul, but then Togo comes in and stops her and they get into a bit of a fight, and you kind of see in the background like all of those tiny little Vertex things, like the weird worm things, are like zooming towards it like as fireballs, and it's starting to form into like the sun. So you sort of see that going on like in the background, you know, which then becomes the giant sun that they have to stop, you know, by the midpoint of the episode. But like we were saying, you know, Yuna is saying like that she'll protect Togo. You know, Togo says, no, you're going to forget me. No, I won't. And Togo has this nice line where she's like, you know, that's probably what we thought too. You know, talking about her and Sonoka. You know, I don't even know why I'm crying right now, you know, because I can't remember. But, you know, it's just so terrible, you know, so sad. But Yuna just comes up there to her, punches her in the face, and basically hugs her
Let's
and
see you grit
says,
those teeth.
yes. Let's see you grit those teeth. It wasn't quite as awesome as that punch, but still pretty cool.
God, I love that part.
Yeah, but yeah, she just saying, you know, you're going to forget. No, I won't. You're going to forget. No, I won't. You're going to forget. No, I won't. You know, and she just overpowers her with emotion. You know, there's no logic to it. It's just, really, you know, you won't forget about me. You'll be by my side forever. You know, and they kind of cry and hug, and it's just,
Don't you
forget about me. So this nice, sweet moment. But it's like, oh, crap. Giant Vertex, giant sun. Kind of got to stop that.
Oh wait, that was the thing.
So they try to stop that.
Oh wait, this show has a plot.
Yeah.
That's what we were doing.
Yuna runs out of power, kind of falls down. She loses her legs, you know, because of her Mankai, which kind of led to like a cool scene where like she trying to get up, you know, but can't, but still determined to like moving around, you know, to the point where she goes Mankai again. You know, Itsuki, Fu, and Karin all come, you know, to stop the sun as well, and then Yuna goes full Mankai, you know, punches her way through the sun, you know, losing her abilities, her like armor and her magical girl stuff to the point where she's just like in her school uniform and touches the core, you know, which causes it to explode, you know, ending the battle. And then this is where things start getting a bit more interesting. You know, we see these petals start falling. You see petals fall on all four all 4 of the girls, except for Yuna. No petals fall on her. And you see all of the fairies start vanishing, except for Yuna. You can see in the background, Yuki is not floating there, disappearing. There's nothing floating there. So, just kind of getting to the idea that, Yuna is different, and there's kind of 2 different ways you can interpret that, which we'll get into later here. But they come back to reality. They talk about this mountain fire thing that happened as a result of their big battle, and they get this text from the Taisha that enemies have stopped attacking. You've lost your fairies and your powers, so you can go back to being normal. They talk about how they've gained battle data that the Taisha are going to use to help the successors because the Shinju isn't seeking offerings anymore, And so they're kind of like, we've done our job, and now we're entrusting what we've done is going to help our successors in the future, our Kohai, whatever you want to call it. And that's where Karin has the eye patch and that cane beside her. So I think that might be the leg thing like you were talking about. And all of them start recovering from their disabilities. Although I like the fact that it's not like, all of a sudden Itsuki has her voice back. No, it's like she's really kind of throaty and like quiet, and it takes a long time for it to come back. It's not just immediate.
Okay, so that's them taking back their offerings, correct?
Yes.
If they can take back their offerings once they are no longer fighting anymore, why didn't their senpai, the one who was almost completely dead,
right,
get hers back when she retired?
The reason is the Shinju changed its mind basically after, and the Shinju and the Taisha changed its mind for several reasons based on what happened here. And Sonoka was kept around, as they said, as this kind of preventative force to stop the heroes in case they went berserk, they went out of control. And they did go berserk and out of control in episode 12, but because...
And who's to say she wouldn't when they gave her back the phone?
But that's the thing. Sonoka said that she was going to be on Togo's side, and once again, this is something in the light novel. The Taisha asks her to stop Togo, and she says, "No, Togo's my friend. I'm going to trust what she decides to do. I'm not going to fight her." So basically, the Taisha and Shinju kind of realize, like, maybe doing this whole system where we give these girls extreme power and then take away their bodily functions and make them go through despair isn't such the best idea in the world, because it almost backfired in our face and like killed all of us.
So we'll find a different way that doesn't involve that. Why didn't we start with that, Steve?
It's that, and then a combination of that and Yuna showing the Shinju like the courage of humanity. And there's actually this, we're going to talk about it later, there's a like short, like it's called a bonus chapter. It's just like a chapter out of a book written by Takahiro, the creator of the series, in like this magazine that came out in March of this year, that basically it's called Sonoka After, and it basically is kind of like an epilogue to the TV show and explains a lot about what has changed about the Shinju and like the system and all those things. We're going to get to that because that's really important. Let's see here. That's right. So they've lost, and the reason that they're getting the offerings and everything back is because they lost the power. They lost their fairies, because it was always said that they were borrowing the Shinju's power, and it was in exchange for the power. So it makes sense that when they lost the power, they got the offerings back. It wasn't like something that was permanently taken away. So, because at first when this episode happened, honestly, like it happened on Christmas Day, actually, was when this episode premiered on Crunchyroll, and I watched it with my sister because I'd shown her the whole series, and I was like really ramped up for this episode because I was really on board with like the dark tone the show had been taking. They kind of had this happy-ish ending, and I was kind of pissed. But then I went and read some things online that sort of said, no, there are still these dark things going on here, and reading all that stuff about the offerings line, and how it fit within the world mechanics they had established. They had established that in return for the Mankai powers that you get, you are offering up part of your body to the Shinju, but if you lose the power, you get the offerings back. It wasn't a sacrifice, it was an offering. That's the key difference. And a lot of people didn't understand that when the episode originally came out, were really pissed about this episode. There were people who were like, this series was great up until the last episode where they ruined everything, So I'm of the opinion that, while the last episode has its issues, it didn't ruin everything, and it didn't contradict its own world mechanics, which is a really important thing for me as a person, because one of the reasons I really like Madoka was because it kept really true to its world mechanics that it had built up. So then they show that Yuna is in a coma and basically completely unresponsive.
She rolled a 1.
She really did. Well, it's got to be a consequence to, going full out with your power and to the point where you touch a vertex with your bare hand. That can't be good for one's body, one would think. And I do really like how they show like the time passing, like how Yuna keeps getting more of these like those
pressed flowers.
Pressed flowers, that's what they're called, in her hand. Like it changes to fall at a certain point. You see Togo like she's walking on crutches, and then eventually she doesn't need the crutches anymore. So that's all, really well done. Like the direction there is really good. Once again, the music, like those scenes of Togo with comatose Yuna are pretty hard to watch. And then we get this kind of climactic scene where Togo's telling this hero story, to Yuna, like how the hero never gave up, even though she was alone, she kept fighting, to the point where Togo starts like weeping right next to Yuna. Really good like voice performance again by her Seiyu. And that's where, Yuna like says her name, looks over, and you sort of get this happy ending kind of thing where she's all right. And there's a really nice inverse on the ending animation, where we had seen all of them walking, and Yuna pushing Togo's wheelchair. We get this shot that's like exactly the same, except Yuna's in the wheelchair and Togo's pushing her, which I really appreciated. Yuna talked about how she was brought back by willpower, not by the Shinju-sama. It was like love and willpower and all those good old magical girl,
or
themes.
God did it.
Well, Togo
or
said
they're wrong and God did it.
Yeah.
Togo says that Shinju-sama didn't do it. Maybe he did. We don't really know. So then, they like go back to the udon shop, that Fu had always gone to. She gives this big speech, during this play that they're doing, the culture festival that they always talk about. And then there's this weird moment where Yuna collapses like in slow motion.
As though they're going to add more conflict. And then they resolve the conflict immediately.
Yeah.
I'm still weirded out by it. Like, what's the point of that?
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like I said, when I watched this episode for the first time, I was pissed because I was like, no, this is too happy. Like, there aren't enough consequences. Like, what the hell, And that really kind of comes off as kind of out of place and weird. But the theory is that, and this is partially disproven by what is said in Sonoka After, but the day that came out, people were online, and I was reading these things and talking about it with people. Basically, that Yuna didn't lose her hero powers. In fact, she is the only one who still has hero powers and is still fighting. Because when she collapses there, time basically froze. She went and fought in a battle, and then came back to herself, but was exhausted and thus collapsed there on the stage. But to everybody else, it just looks like she fell down because time stopped only for her because she's the only hero, which is why you don't see the petals fall on her or her fairy disappear when it happens to everybody else, and why this whole thing happened with her in the coma. Like some people speculate like that she because she touched a Vertex's core, like she talked to the Shinju-sama and convinced him to change his mind and like to have him give their offerings back to her friends, and all these things, which is what changed my mind about the ending. Basically, like that it was this happy ending, but then underneath it all, there was lots of hints to the fact that there's something more going on here. That there's something darker going on. That not all is right with Yuna, we see there's a shot of Sonoka standing up, like her bandages flying off in the wind. So you kind of get the feeling that even she, after a certain amount of time, is getting to the point where she's better, because her offerings got given back. Great, another great inversion of the ED, the ending animation, where all of them are walking, including Yuna and Togo, which was nice. And then at the very end, we see Yuki Yuna chapter, like in the corner, like that's the last words that it ends on, which could either mean that this is the end of Yuki Yuna's chapter or it's the beginning of Yuki Yuna's chapter if we go with the theory that, she is the only hero fighting, And big part of that theory that people talk about is what she says in both like in that hero story that Togo says to Yuna when she's when she's still comatose, and then what Yuna says during the play. Both of those things kind of hint to this idea that maybe Yuna is the only hero who's still fighting. Because in Togo's hero story, she says, hurt as they were, the hero never gave up. If everyone gave up, the world would have been truly engulfed in darkness. Some said that it was pointless, yet the hero never gave up. One by one, they fell to the Demon King, and before they knew it, the hero was alone. No one knew that the hero was alone. Even when she was alone, the hero never gave up fighting, because for as long as she didn't give up, there was hope. No matter what she'd lost, no matter what, I don't want to lose my most precious friend. No matter how sad, how painful. Oh, right. And then Togo says to her, no matter how sad, how painful, you said you'd always be with me. She's crying by that point. But I think the key line there is no one knew that the hero was alone. Like this idea that Yuna is still fighting while they are not, and they have no idea, I think is an interesting idea that they could play with. In the final speech that she says in the play, it says, the world is full of misery, full of despair. Or this isn't Yuna saying it, this is the Demon King saying it. World is full of misery, full of despair. You too shall turn a blind eye and fail. Be frozen beneath the merciless coldness of reality. And then Yuna says, that's just a matter of spirit. You can be a friend to anyone you care for. You can be many times more powerful if you care for each other. You'll have infinite willpower. The world's filled with painful things and sad things and things you can't handle by yourself. But if there's someone you love, you'll never buckle. You'll never give up. There's someone you love, so you keep getting back up again. That's why a hero never loses. Going to this idea, Yuna keeps getting back up, never giving up, because she's fighting for someone that she loves. So I don't know. What do you guys think of that theory?
That's actually interesting. I would like to see more of that, but my problem with theories like that is it doesn't make this show actually better unless this show actually shows it happening. Like, the show doesn't get to just benefit from creative fans making up excuses. Unless the show gets another season and that happens, I'm going to assume it's not canon and that was just a weird thing that happened.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Ryan, what do you think?
It makes sense. Like you said, it's not canon until they implement it, but...
Mm-hmm. Andrew, any thoughts?
I think that's... I can see where they're coming from as a theory, but, I need more for that to, work. Because, there needs to be, okay, so they never once show what happens. So, okay, so every time they go and fight the thing, right? They leave, the time freezes, and they're like, all right, we're frozen. And they go fight the thing. They don't end up back where they were. They end up on the rooftop.
That's
so for
true.
her... for that thing to be a thing that happened, and that's already getting into a weird violation of their rules, and then it's weird, and I'm weirded out by that. So I feel like there needs to be they needed to seed that idea earlier in the show that the girls from an outside perspective, they show them the time freezing, and they show from somebody else's perspective for that to work. Because right now, it really just feels like they're grasping at straws for something that doesn't make a lot of sense that I was already confused about. And I do agree that the story definitely does support that theory. But it also goes back on the other arc words of the series, which are one of the 5 tenets, which is, if you're in trouble, talk to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Yuki Yuna, who is so
she's a paladin of those tenets.
She is a paladin of those tenets, would violate one of those tenets, which is she's totally in trouble, but she's not going to tell her friends about this, is weird to me and kind of almost a character violation.
But also at the same time, she didn't tell anyone except Togo about not being able to taste anything until she absolutely had to. Until someone else came to her and says, oh, Togo told me. It's dang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Peter said. I hadn't actually thought about your point about them teleporting to the rooftop, and that is a good point. I do kind of wonder if we buy the idea that Yuna had a conversation with the Shinju.
That's one I don't buy much at all, because that's just them that's a thing that happened in anime all the time, so maybe that happened.
That would have actually been more interesting, though, to if that was a thing that happened and they showed that happening. That would have been actually more interesting than all that rest of that crap that happened in the back half of that episode.
There's nothing in the show that shows that happening, so to me that just seems like the people being that would be cool, and that's happened in other animes.
Yeah, the theory could be made that if she talked to him, she was able to make it so okay, when you teleport me back, don't teleport me to the roof, because when all of them were getting teleported to the roof, they were all together. If she's trying to keep this hidden from them, if she just teleported to the roof, it would immediately spoil it. So say, no, teleport me to where I am, that could be a thing that could happen. Once again, this is all theory, speculation, not really grounded in the show. But this gets into what I talked about earlier, that bonus chapter called Sonoka After, written by the creator Takahiro. So there's a few things revealed in that. One, and this is apparently an issue more with the Crunchyroll sub, because other people said no, like this should be said differently, because in that text it mentions like the Vertexes attacks have stopped. But in like other people saying no, like a more proper translation of that should be, the Vertexes attacks have stopped for the time being, or something to that effect.
See, I was very confused on that. Like, if that, like, okay, so if this is resolved, then why do they need replacements? Like, that kind of thing.
Right.
It confused me.
So basically, the Sonoka After thing says, after they defeated the Giant One, Vertex invasion stopped abruptly. Immediately, the Shinju and Taisha worked to repair the wall. A prophecy had confirmed that there would be no more attacks for a while, but be it a year or two, no one knew how long this period of peace would last. But one thing was for sure, the Vertex would definitely be back. So basically, Vertexes have been damaged because so many of them were killed in that attack, but they are coming back, and it's just a matter of time, how long it will take them to come back. Also in this, Sonoka is talking with Togo for a lot of it, and there's like this point where she's like talking about Yuna, and she like pauses like kind of strangely, and later on in it she thinks in her head, but every time I look at Yu, I feel a bit strange. I wonder what that is. It feels like something's not right. And they mention in this thing that like Yuna, is recovering, but slowly, and she still has like a lot of dizzy spells and like weakness and such. So the dizzy spell thing being a direct reference to what happens to her at the end of episode 12. So bringing up basically there's something is not quite right about Yuna. She is not totally better. Now does that mean that she is secretly a hero and none of the rest of them are? No. And there's actually something that is mentioned here that does kind of put a hole in that theory, because she mentions, here we go, Sonoka's saying, and then you look at Yu, who didn't even know if she would get better, being all cheerful. She's amazing. From what I've heard, she forcibly went into Mankai and charged at the center of the enemy's body, then touched its core with her bare hand. I thought that maybe a bug occurred in the system, or her consciousness had been taken by the Vertex. When it comes to Vertexes, not even Shinju-sama's power could be of any use. Perhaps it was both. At any rate, she was in a really bad state, but she still managed to come back to us with sheer willpower after hearing our voices. Heroes are all about guts. At first, I thought Yuna-chan had shouldered everyone's offerings. That's like the key line there, because people were saying like, oh, she shouldered the burdens of all of her friends, convinced the Shinju to give all of her friends back the offerings, but in return, she would be the only hero fighting. But she says Yuna-chan had shouldered everyone's offerings. If that were the case, Yu really would have been unable to come back. That would make Washi and everyone sad. I think a hero is someone who gives courage to other people, making even a god think humans have some backbone. She really is amazing. And the other thing that's mentioned in this light novel bonus chapter thing is basically the Shinju and Taisha's plans for the future of this system. Basically, they're going into mass production with it. They decided that focusing all of the tons of the most of the Shinju's power on like a few girls wasn't working well, because it was like making them unstable, because of the necessary repercussions of the Sange, taking away their bodily functions, that just wasn't an effective system, and would eventually, they might hold out for a year or two against the Vertexes, but eventually they would get overwhelmed, as like the heroes got weaker due to them losing their abilities and there being a limited number of them and all those sorts of things, But then the idea being that partially because of the girls' rebellion in episode 12, seeing the fact that, they were like unresponsive, rebellious, almost destroyed the system because of their own, like they're going crazy because of the Mankai and what it did to them. They changed their mind because of that. Also because Yuna showed the Shinju-sama like the courage of humanity, and that they had like gathered enough battle data that they determined that they could do this mass production thing where basically apparently they're going to give Shinju powers to like tons of people, like all of humanity, but only in limited amounts. They won't be nearly as powerful as the girls, and they won't be able to do Mankai, and there won't be Sange, because everybody will have a limited amount of power. But Shinju believes in because of Yuna and what she did, he believes in like the courage of humanity and believes that they'll be able to face the truth about the system, telling them the truth about what's beyond the wall and that they have to fight it, but that this might be a more permanent solution rather than just a delaying tactic.
I've got a couple problems with that. And part of it is, like, if he really wants more stable units, he should really just not use middle school girls.
But it had to be middle school girls. They're innocent and pure and magical girls.
If you're looking for purity, use, like, a girl who's older and not a skank. Just talk to someone who's, like, old enough to, like, accept the consequences of, like, oh, I don't want literally everyone to die. I will sacrifice myself. And then another issue is, like, they said at one point that Shinju is also a god. He's one of the he rebelled against the other gods and in favor of humanity. If he cared about humanity that much, why did he still need proving that they were worth something?
Well, I guess it's not even so much that, but, like, he has a point. Telling all of humanity, hey, we're under attack by these horrible vertex beings and the world is like a giant illusion barrier thing, and we need to fight in order to stop it, like, that could have a horrible repercussion on humanity. Maybe humanity doesn't have the willpower to deal with that kind of crushing blow to their reality of the world, Sonika mentions here the fact that it can be mass-produced means that an invincible barrier is no longer feasible. Sacrifices will no longer be required, but in return the heroes will be weaker than before. However, everyone will be able to fight. I think that any young girl will be able to transform as long as they remain pure. That's just me speculating, though I don't know exactly what kind of system they'll be implementing after all. Even mentioned something about, like, a solution to fixing the world outside of the barrier, something to do with, like, seeds or some such. She's being very vague about it because she herself doesn't know all that about the Taisha. After half of the group rebelled, it was only natural that they would try to change the system, and as a result, civilians are getting dragged into the fight. Shinju-sama believed mankind would be able to walk down the harsh path instead of a gentle one that leads to its demise. That is why it gave back our offerings and allowed for mass production of the system so that everyone would be able to stand and fight. Everyone will don their own flowers. Isn't that a good thing? That's what she says. So is it basically, and in this same magazine that this was published in, Takahiro and Seiji and, like, the key people of the show basically said the show has done really well. It was one of the top selling things of the season, and we are in talks about plans for season 2. So if it gets more support, then we might actually get that season 2. So basically encouraging fans to support it because there is a very real chance of them getting a season 2, which is good in my book. And based on this is the direction they'd be going in, I guess, with the season 2. Something with this mass production, getting a bunch of girls who are less powerful to fight the Vertexes with some secret thing going on with Yuna. What that is, we don't know. Maybe she is really a hero, or maybe it's something else. Who knows? Okay. Whew. Sorry, guys, that was a lot of talking, but I wanted to get that out there because I just learned about this Sonika After thing, like, 2 days ago because I didn't know about it because it's actually pretty recent development. So getting to overall thoughts about the show, this is one that, like I said, I wasn't expecting much from at the beginning, but by the time we got to, like, episode 5, I was really on board with the action, and then we got into the more dark dramatic stuff. Episode 9 really hit me hard, and 10, 11 also building up that darkness. I was, like, totally on board with this show. Episode 12, when I initially watched it, I was pretty upset about it, like, dejected on Christmas Day, but reading more about it, coming up with these theories and some of this supplementary information that's been released, I've kind of come up with my own thoughts about the ending and how it does still work within the world mechanics of the show. And even if we look at it as like a happy ending, it was still really well executed, like those scenes with Yuna in a coma, like they were really well shot, really well acted, like well executed on that concept. So even if I'm a little upset about the fact that there weren't enough consequences, like it's not like they shied around dark, dramatic things in that episode. They really dived into some heavy stuff. So this is a show that I really do like. I think it's just outside of my top 30. Like, it has enough flaws that keeps it from being, that top tier thing. Some of the stuff with the ending, the fact that it doesn't do Monica Magica levels of like dark dramaticness. It kind of does get distracted a little bit with the slice of life stuff, which does make the characters come alive. And one of my favorite aspects of the show is the camaraderie between the girls, and you really get attached to these characters by the end of it. You really feel their friendship, and all of those themes that it's carrying through the end of the series. That willpower's the most important thing. You got to fight for someone you love. Blah blah blah. So I think this was a show that is one of the best of the fall season. Really kind of came out of nowhere and surprised me with how good it was. So I definitely highly recommend it. Andrew.
All right. So I was pretty underwhelmed by the show overall. I'm not as in love as you are, clearly. It's not bad. Like, I can't say that it's a bad show because it's really not enough there for it to be a bad show. The characters are like clearly set up. The world is largely consistent, which is a good thing, especially with how I was kind of confused in the beginning about like, oh wait, this isn't our world. There's like a different god, and the world's actually much smaller, and there's like a wall thing. Yeah. But yeah, they do a good job of building the world up. The characters are, like I said, consistent. The relationships between them was very well established very quickly, and I was very happy with that. But the characters, except for Karin, none of them really grabbed me.
Not even Togo? Because for me, Togo definitely comes off as interesting.
Togo, but she kind of goes half crazy for like an episode, and then that's it. Like, that's really like the only like part of the problem is, we've said this, is that none of them really, except for Karin, really have any character flaws, which I think is a problem for their characters, and then they come off as kind of...
I would disagree with that. Okay, so let's look at it. I'll admit, Yuna doesn't have much in the way of character flaws.
She does not.
I'll give you that. But Fu, has... like, she's doing this out of revenge, so that's not exactly noble.
But that never really comes up.
That's mentioned once.
Okay.
And, like, so briefly that we missed it.
Fair point.
And
but
she
then
doesn't, like, get angry at the Vertexes or anything. Or she's doing this thing, like, I hate the No, she's like, I don't really care.
That's true. But she feels like this horrible guilt about getting everybody involved in it, especially Itsuki, especially when the truth is revealed.
But that's not a flaw.
Guilt isn't a flaw. That's just like, oh, I'm a real person who understands the consequences of my actions.
Yeah, that's not a flaw. Actually, a character flaw would have been like, no, I needed you guys to stay here because I couldn't do this alone. That would have actually been like a flaw, like a fear of doing this alone would have been more interesting to me than, I'm so sorry I got you guys almost killed. Like, I feel really bad. That's not like a problem with like her character, though.
I guess you're right. It's not a flaw, but it's something that made her interesting, and it gave her something to struggle with.
It did give her something
that was enough for me.
Struggle with, but it wasn't like, it was such a base struggle that I was like, yeah, of course you would feel guilty about this, but nothing bad has really happened to them other than the slight
minor losses, and none of them are angry with you about it.
Exactly,
and none of them feel anything bad.
Yeah, they don't even like. They're like, no, don't worry. It was so. We would have struggled with you. We would have chose to struggle with you. And then she's like, "Oh, that's so nice, but I still feel bad." I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay. We forgive you." And I'm like, "That's not even a conflict. That's like, avoiding drama."
It makes sense that she would feel guilt about it.
It does,
certainly. And it's not as though Itsuki is certainly still in pain about the fact that she's lost her voice and can't sing anymore. And with the revelation of episode 11, it's not just, I lost an eye, but that's it. No, they're trapped in this never-ending cycle of like constant pain and torment and losing more and more things in this never-ending battle.
I mean,
that's what she's gotten them into.
Well, yeah, that's what she signed them up for, and that was bad, but she didn't even know that. So like, had she known that stuff and then still done it, that would have been a problem. But she was lied to and manipulated just the same as they were, so she didn't even get to know that part. So she also is still devoid of like really any fault or guilt in this situation. She was just told, pick some people that you think would be cool to like help fight this thing.
Pick from this list, and they will be your partners in fighting crime.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, they had the highest scores on that test. They mentioned there was an aptitude test.
Yeah, so...
So in the end, she didn't even pick them. They were just like, these are the people that you're going to be working with. Find an excuse to hang out with them.
Mm-hmm. And she did that, and that was cool. But like I said, she was manipulating and lied to as much as they were, so that absolves her of any possible guilt.
Then Itsuki, obviously does have some flaws, very unconfident and like shy and all those things near the beginning, and by the end has grown to the point where she can fight.
Does have an arc, but those are such minimal flaws, and they don't create really much conflict.
It's more of an archetype than like a flawed character, though. Let's look like because she is so like beneath the shyness. She is like so perfect and happy and bubbly and like I'm so happy.
I get you're right that it's like archetypal. It's not particularly unique, but she does. I mean, she overcomes those things. She grows as a character by the end of the show.
And her and Karn are the only
most.
two that like have any semblance of character arcs.
And Togo, once again, does have some like flaws in that like she is, so searching for the truth that she's willing to do like these kind of dark things,
What dark things? She doesn't do anything.
Trying to commit suicide.
That was only to prove a point.
Yeah, but it's still. There's some people online I know who like got really mad at that scene because they felt like it was out of character for her. Personally, I didn't think it was, but some people do think that.
She was a very analytical character, so she created a hypothesis that the spirits will not let her die. So she tested that in the most logical manner possible.
Exactly. So, but the point being that she is so driven by that kind of sense of logic that she comes to the conclusion, the only logical thing for us to do to end the suffering is,
that
to
mental
kill
breakdown
all of
and
us.
kill everyone.
But see, that's not like that is like.
But it's not a mental breakdown. She was still very logical. She was still like she was crying as she was explaining it to Yuna. She was still herself, but she thought that this was the only thing.
So then it was just dumb.
That's a logical fallacy. Like, yeah, the only way that we can stop suffering is for us all to die.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a euthanasia thing almost.
That's a very like. Just very illogical solution. Like, oh, hey, look, let's solve our problems by dying because that will solve all the problems. That is like, yeah, no, you're right. But it will solve our problems.
But do you think
But then no one appreciates it because everyone is dead.
But do you think Sonoka would be better off, being dead than alive, given the situation that she's in? Like,
she's pretty happy.
Well, she was no, she wasn't happy. She was absolutely not happy.
She was not happy.
She was begrudgingly accepting the situation.
Exactly.
It's also one of those needs the many versus the needs the few kind
Well,
of
we
thing.
could bring that into Ava.
We can
Shinji
bring
has
that
to
into
bear the brunt of the world, but we still feel bad for him.
We do feel bad for him because
you
he
still
has
tell
a
him to get
crap
in the
lot
damn robot.
But we still yell at Shinji get in the robots. Like, he's a crap lot in life, and he's dealing with like a
Right,
legitimate.
but my point is, in the Ava podcast, I brought up the fact that no, Shinji, this sucks, but you have to bear the brunt of this for the sake of the world. One person's life doesn't, do the whole thing for the world. And you said no, but that's the whole point because it's going against that. They're doing the exact same thing here, and now you're saying no, the needs of the world do outweigh their personal
no, because
feelings.
see, because Shinji never ever turned to the. Well, he did turn to the world and say, "Screw you, I don't care about it." But because of how depressed he was, but with Toto, she's like, no, the logical solution is this world is stupid and flawed and therefore it must die. She takes the Borg solution to the problem, not the, hey, let's try to find a way that's out this, or I'm sorry, but this sucks, but we literally have no other option. It's either this or everybody we know and loves dies. All the innocent people that we never ever, of which there are no other actual characters in this show to like make us like latch on to fighting for, but like all their parents who they clearly cared about,
Well, except
die for this.
Except Togo, that's kind of the tricky thing. Togo doesn't really care about her parents because her parents sold her off to the Taisha
that's true.
for 2 years, just for personal gain and because they thought it was the right thing to do because the Shinju is holy. She talks about that. Our parents know about all these secrets, but they lied to us for years.
Yeah.
So in my mind, Toga doesn't care about her parents. She doesn't seem to have any family, no siblings that we know of. So the only people she cares about are the people in the Hero Club, specifically Yuna. And she thinks that rather than watching all of my friends suffer and more and possibly start losing our memories of our friendships and of our time together, and so it's like we are living these horrible lives where we aren't even friends anymore. If I lose my friendship with Yuna, I have literally nothing to live for. So the only thing for us to do is to die, because at least that's better off than suffering.
Is that though? I mean, but then everybody else dies with you. It's not just you five dying; it's everybody.
You're right, and obviously I think Togo was wrong to doing that, and Yuna was right to stop her. But it makes sense from her flawed point of view, and she was a flawed character.
See,
is what I'm getting to.
I mean, that's just like flawed logic, though. Like, She was a very logical character who came up with
Well,
a flawed
being
solution.
too logical can be a character flaw.
It can be a character flaw. Okay, fine. Then she was a flawed character who grabbed the idiot ball in the 11th episode, only to get the reversal in the 12th episode. Versus like some interesting, which also once again avoided the intercharacter drama that we that the show lacked, where Yuna could have actually, or somebody, it didn't have to be Yuna because Yuna could have actually saved her, but one of the other girls could have been could have actually gotten into a fight with her and been like, no, this is not what we want.
They did though. Fu and Itsuki and
once the ball was already dropped and there were already oceans of bad guys swarming into the city.
So you're saying if they had confronted her about it before she had done all that?
Before she turned and said, screw this world, I'm gonna kill everything, if they had talked to her and then an argument happened and she went on anyway.
Yeah, but the issue with that being there was literally zero time gap for them to do that with, because
there would have been plenty of time if they hadn't been so dang slow.
No, but as they were dealing with Fu and everything, Togo was talking to Sonoka, went outside, saw the reality of the world, and decided, I'm going to blow a hole in the wall. Literally, the thing with Fu ended, and then they were sent to the world where Togo had blown the hole in the wall. They had no time in between to, even know where she was.
Well, I mean, yeah, but, Togo should have come back, because, every other instance in this show, when she made a new discovery, she would walk up to them and explain to them, okay, so this is what I think is going on. What do you guys think? And they're like, okay, yeah, that's cool. So this time she discovers what's going on. She's like, okay, guys, this is what I think is going on. The only solution we have right now is for us all to say screw this world and let it burn to ashes.
Yeah, but...
And then there could have been, this interesting thing where they
she
took
probably
sides on that.
She probably knew that they, at least, most of them would try to stop her.
Yeah.
So better to implement your...
So might as well just shoot them in the head while they're not looking, so that'll make it feel better. Let's take the of mice and men approach to this.
So instead,
apocalyptic scale.
She acts beforehand, and then forces them, into action.
Or all those little kids that they help out so much that she just murdered mercilessly, so that her friends wouldn't have to suffer for them.
Exactly. All right. So, interesting discussion about the characters there. Ryan, what are your final thoughts on the show?
It was pretty. It was cute. I enjoyed it. My biggest problem is that this is a weird thing with me, is that Magitech bothers me. The cross between technology and magic.
Okay,
That's
so
just a weird thing.
the fact that they have their magic involves weapons.
That involves the cell phones.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's
Just
what
a
gets
thematic thing that gets on your
me.
nerves.
Yeah.
I don't.
Either go with the arcade or go with the high tech. It just bothers me when you mix the two.
I don't. I actually kind of like that because it's a modern day kind of thing.
Yeah,
Although,
and I appreciate that.
I was kind of thinking that if that club gives out free cell phones to everybody who joins, I feel like a lot of people would want to be in that club.
I think they just give out a free app.
No, they gave them the phones because they got the smartphone had the app on it.
Right.
After the end of the
Episode 6, they had to get new
quote
phones.
unquote
You're right.
end of the Angels or
The Vertexes.
Vertexes.
They're totally angels. Okay. So you thought it was good. Magitech bothered you. Anything else?
I mean, some of the characters were a little generic, but I did enjoy it. I haven't seen as much anime, so generic doesn't mean as much to me.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, but you've seen storytelling.
Yeah.
Storytelling's the same across all cultures, so...
It is. I'm also
Especially nowadays.
I'm also not one. I'm also much less judgmental. And I enjoy.
I'm sorry that I wasn't compelled by. I just want to be the best friends ever, guys.
I've watched a lot of things in my life. I get stingy now.
I'm aware. I have debates with you about things because we are both very critical thinking people. So
and I can just appreciate a simple story for what it is.
yeah, my sisters are like that because sometimes I'll be watching a movie with my family and criticizing something or saying, oh no, that shot they made a mistake because that broke the 180-degree line, and they're like, shut up, just let's watch the movie.
Well, it's one thing to be questioning story. I think it's a different thing to be questioning shot composition.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Yeah, I'm a film major.
I actually
I'm sorry.
really hold that back when I watch movies with you guys. Like, you have no idea how much I want to talk about the shot composition.
Andrew,
of
you
some
and
of
I
the
need
shot-
to geek out sometime.
Exactly.
Well, we did that during The Shining. We were
We
geeking
did.
out about
Oh my
that.
god, Stanley Kubrick is so good at it, though.
He really is. Peter, what are your final thoughts on the show?
I think it's very slow paced, and they spend too much time building the relationships when you were really convinced by the relationships by the end of the third episode. I think that they could have added, if you believe that the characters are flawed enough, then they should have just introduced more situations where those flaws could have shined, and we could have seen the characters grow to be more than happy, sunshiny girls who want to fight for friendship. And then they lose some things, but those things are kind of inconsequential, and they end up getting them back by the end. So in the end, it was just kind of a moot point, and everything's happy.
Interesting. It is interesting that your critique of the show that they spent too much time building the relationships is, but it's also at the same time a compliment, because you're saying that they built the relationships so well in the early episodes that I already believed that they were friends, and so I didn't need for it to be.
And then they spent
more.
episodes 6 and 7 doing more relationship building and very slow paced.
Right.
It's just not necessary. Like, they need to understand when they hit the target and then stop shooting grenades at it.
Right. But your point being that they did a good job with it in those early episodes to the point
Oh,
that
yeah.
you didn't need
Like,
to see more.
I believe that they're friends, guys. I really do. They're adorable together. I already ship Home Run and
Togo and
Monica.
Yuna.
Togo
Yuki
and,
Yuna.
Yeah, I don't care. I already ship them.
yeah.
Well, they're kind of Homer. I mean, Togo is definitely very Homer. Yuki is not very Madoka, because she's
not.
way more actiony
She's
than
definitely
Madoka
a lot more
was.
headstrong than Madoka was.
Still,
Yeah.
I already ship it. I already believe all these relationships. I want to see the youngest girl succeed. I want to, like, I believe these characters, and that they are friends, and that they love hanging out with each other and doing their perfect girl like community service stuff and finding kittens and making websites about kittens. I believe it all. Can we do something to make that, like, more interesting than a website about kittens?
I see. And just curious, do you watch much slice of life anime, like, in general?
No.
Okay, see, I'm a person that can appreciate that. Like, I love Azumanga Daioh, and that is totally slice of life, but it's great. you
Slice
know?
of life can
And
be
of what I've
okay,
seen, I
but-
do enjoy the slice of life, like Clannad and Ohana. They're
Yeah.
very slice of lifey.
Yeah. Although Clannad and Anohana mix slice of lifey with a serious romance comedy, and then darker romantic elements as well.
I think I have a problem with I don't have a problem with slice of life as, like, a thing, but I want to, like, know that I'm signing up for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I signed up for, like, and I complained about this when we watched Code Geass,
Right.
when they did that, and I'm like, God, this is not that interesting
It was
compared
literally
to
only,
the
like,
war.
It was literally
that's
only
going-
like 2 episodes.
There is
though.
more than 2 episodes. There's, like, so many episodes of them in that school
least-
just
okay.
In R1 or whatever, the first season of
Yeah.
that, it was called. There was a lot more. It did resolve, like, that, like, went away in R2 and became much better, in my opinion, as a
Right.
result. But in season 1, that was really bad. And I'm like, this is cool, except the fact that there was a war that I was watching.
Right. And like I said, I think Yuki Yuna is interesting in that it combines happy slice of life with magical action and then the dark, dramatic storytelling, kind of fusing it all into one, which is an odd mix, and then I can see how it couldn't work for some people. For me personally, I like slice of life enough, and I like these characters enough that I didn't mind the slice of life bits. Also, because like I said, I think the writing was pretty on point. The comedy was pretty on point in the show, and so they made those scenes like, that hot spring scene was better than a lot of other generic hot spring scenes I see in other romance harem anime. They did little things to make them better.
Because there was, like, no real, like,
Sexual implication there.
like
it was just
guys
like girls
to,
in a
like,
bath.
try to sneak in and sneak looks at the naked girls, like in every other show.
Yeah, but like when they were playing on the beach, like I don't know, I can't specify what exactly it was, but like something about it felt like fresh and like more engaging than like some other beach episodes I've seen that weren't as well written. So that's just me,
Yeah.
I guess. So now talking about what we want to do for next time, one I'm kind of interested in is a series, Gunbuster and Diebuster. Gunbuster being a 6-episode OVA series directed by Hideaki Anno, the creator of Evangelion. Created by Gainax back in 1980, the first thing he ever directed. It's a giant robot show that's actually what's inspired my current movie that I'm working on. Deals with time dilation and some pretty interesting things.
That could be cool.
And then its sequel that was made in the 2000s by the director of Fooly Cooley, Die Buster, which is it's just a sequel to it. Definitely way more silly, different kind of style. Also 6 episodes. Actually better than Gunbuster in my personal opinion.
So there's 6 episodes. Are these like half-hour episodes each, or are they like it's 6 hours, but each episode is like an hour long?
No, there's 6 half-an-hour episodes.
Okay.
So it combines to be about 12 episodes long if we did both series for next week. Do you think that's possible?
They on Crunchyroll?
They are not. I did see Gunbusters on YouTube, illegally, because there is no legal streaming for either of them. Gunbuster, they're both picked up in the West, like for distribution on DVD, but streaming-wise, there's nothing for either of them.
We'll look into how easy it is to find it, and if it works, we will participate.
All right, cool. Well, like I said, I think I found him on YouTube, so we can watch him pretty easily. And I own all of Die Buster on DVD, so we might even do a marathon of that at my place. But
Cool.
If you guys enjoyed this podcast, you can email us at techheads@avwproductions.com. You can follow us on Twitter at techheadsou, like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on iTunes, give us good ratings and reviews. We like to hear from you guys. Thank you guys for being on this podcast. Thank you, Ryan. I know this is your first one. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
Cool. And until next time, we will see you guys later.
This product is copyright AVW Productions,